Silver Ridge was a quiet town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. People in this small town lived simple lives, knowing each other's names, helping their neighbors, and living without the chaos of the outside world. The townsfolk were used to a peaceful existence, but all of that was about to change. It began early one cool autumn morning. The sun was still low in the sky when the sky suddenly lit up with a strange, unnatural glow. People looked up from their morning chores, their faces filled with confusion and awe. A massive spacecraft, larger than any building in Silver Ridge, hovered over the town. Its surface shimmered, reflecting the sunlight, and the noise it made was like a low hum that vibrated through the ground. Sheriff Hank Carter, a tough no-sense man in his early 40s, stood outside the sheriff's office when he noticed the ship. His hand instinctively rested on the handle of his holstered gun, though he knew it wouldn't do much against whatever this was. What in the world? He muttered to himself. His deputy, Ellie Warren, a young woman who had just started in the force a few months ago, stood beside him, equally bewildered. "Sheriff, do you think it's—" She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Before he could respond, the ship lowered slowly until it hovered just above the ground, its engine sound growing louder. It paused, and then a hatch on its side opened. A tall, imposing figure emerged, its silhouette dark against the bright sky. The creature was unlike anything anyone in Silver Ridge had ever seen. Its skin was a metallic gray, its eyes glowed faintly, and its form was wrapped in strange, futuristic armor that seemed to shimmer in the morning light. The figure stepped down onto the earth with an eerie grace, its movements smooth and deliberate. The people of Silver Ridge were frozen in place. Whispers spread like wildfire as the townsfolk gathered outside, staring at the alien who had come to their doorstep. Sheriff Carter stepped forward, his voice clear and commanding. "All right, everyone, stay calm. We don't know what's going on, but we're going to handle this. Just back up a little and let me talk to this ... thing." Ellie looked up at him, her face pale. "Sheriff, do you think it's dangerous?" "I don't know, but I'm not going to let anyone get hurt," Hank replied, his hand still resting near his gun. Though he knew that force was likely unnecessary, the alien raised one of its arms, and a soft, musical voice echoed in the air. The language was unlike anything the townspeople had heard before, though somehow it seemed to carry a certain resonance that everyone could understand. "I choose." The word hung in the air, clear and simple. But what did it mean? The crowd murmured, exchanging nervous glances. Sheriff Carter stepped forward again, trying to maintain control of the situation. "Hey you. Whatever you're doing, you need to stop," he called out in his loud, authoritative voice. The alien's gaze turned toward him, and for a moment, the sheriff thought it was studying him. Then the alien's glowing eyes swept over the crowd, scanning the people who had gathered in the street. It lingered for a moment on several women, each one niche, each one unique. Then, without warning, it fixed its gaze on one woman standing near the back of the crowd. The alien pointed at her. "Her," it declared, its voice deep and resonant. Everyone turned to look. The woman the alien had chosen was Grace Monroe, the town's most unassuming resident. Grace was well known around Silver Ridge, not for any particular skill or talent, but because she had lived there longer than most. She was a large woman, often looked at with curiosity, sometimes with sympathy, but never with admiration. Grace had always been comfortable with herself, though she could feel the stares and whispers. And yet here she was, standing in the spotlight. Grace wasn't bothered by it. She was used to people looking at her. But this was something else entirely. The alien had chosen her. Why? What did it mean? Sheriff Carter's face tightened in disbelief. "What do you mean, her? Why her?" His voice was louder now, filled with confusion and authority. The alien took a step toward Grace, who stood frozen, staring back at it. She wasn't frightened, not in the way others might expect. Grace was used to the odd looks from others, but this was different. She felt no fear, only curiosity. "Why her?" Hank repeated. He wasn't backing down, but he was beginning to understand the alien wasn't here to harm anyone. It was choosing someone. But why Grace? The alien's voice answered, clear and cold. "She represents strength. Strength beyond what your kind can understand. She is the one I seek. Grace blinked, trying to process the words. The crowd watched, captivated by the alien's choice. And though many had their doubts, they couldn't help but wonder if there was something more to Grace than they had ever realized. The sheriff turned to the crowd, his mind racing. "All right, everyone, stay back. We're not sure what's going on, but I'll handle this." "Grace," he called, turning to her. "You okay?" Grace nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'm fine." She took a deep breath, then added, "It's just ... Strange, isn't it?" "It sure is," Hank agreed, his mind still reeling. "But I'll be damned if I let this thing take anyone without a fight. You hear me?" Grace nodded again, but she was no longer listening to him. She was focused on the alien, her mind working through the words it had said. Strength. She is the one I seek. What did it mean? What was this alien really after? Before she could think too much about it, the alien moved toward her, stopping just in front of her. It seemed to tower over her, even though Grace was no short woman herself. The creature studied her carefully, as if seeing something that no one else did. The alien then raised its hand, and a soft light emanated from its palm. Grace felt a strange sensation in her chest, like a hum in the air around her. It wasn't painful, but it was ... different. "What is this?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. The alien tilted its head slightly, as if processing the question. Then, with a voice that seemed almost human, it replied, "You are not what I expected. Yet you are more than I anticipated. Your form, your power, it is unmatched in your species." The crowd held its breath as the alien spoke. Sheriff Carter stepped forward, his jaw tight. "What do you want with her?" "I want to learn," the alien replied simply. "I want to understand what makes her the choice. She is strong, yet she does not fit the ideal. Why? I seek to know." Grace stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "Well, if you want to know about me, then you'll have to do it the hard way. There's more to me than what you see." For the first time, the alien's expression seemed to soften. It stepped back slightly, as if processing the response. The sheriff, still uneasy, but somewhat reassured by Grace's courage, let out a breath. "All right, then. We'll see where this goes. But know this, alien, we don't take kindly to being pushed around. So whatever your plan is, you better make it clear." The alien simply nodded. "I have no intention of harm, only ... understanding." With that, the crowd began to disperse, though the whispers continued. Sheriff Carter stayed close to Grace, his hands still near his gun, but there was no immediate danger. The alien had made its choice, and for reasons that were still unclear, Grace was at the center of it. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting its warm light over Silver Ridge, the people of the town couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to unfold. And whether they were ready for it or not, Grace Monroe was going to play a central role in it all, you said. Part 2. The Unlikely Bond. The next few days in Silver Ridge were nothing short of strange. The whole town was buzzing with gossip, and people could hardly believe what had happened. The alien, a creature from beyond the stars, had chosen Grace Monroe, a woman most people considered just an ordinary, quiet member of the community. It had come to the town, and in front of everyone, the alien had singled her out. No one knew why. Sheriff Hank Carter spent most of his time trying to maintain order in the town. But even he was unsettled by the alien's presence. He wasn't sure what to make of the creature or its intentions. But Grace, the woman at the center of it all, seemed unbothered. While people whispered about her, she held her head high, almost as though this wasn't the first time she had been the subject of strange attention. Grace had never been someone who fit the mold of what others expected. She was larger than most, and some in town thought she lacked the grace of the more attractive women. But Grace never paid attention to such things. She was confident in herself, even if others didn't see her the same way. Now, though, she felt something had changed. The alien's attention had given her a sense of purpose, something she never expected. Zephyr, the alien, was not the monstrous creature people expected. Despite his imposing appearance, there was something calm and almost intelligent in his manner. After the first few days of observing Grace and getting to know the people of Silver Ridge, Zephyr started speaking to her. The first conversation between them wasn't in English yet, at least not entirely. He spoke in a language unfamiliar to Grace, but after a few moments something extraordinary happened. She could understand him. His words began to make sense, not in perfect translation, but in the way thoughts are exchanged. "I do not understand," Zephyr said, looking down at her with his glowing eyes. "You do not fit the ideal. Yet your people are strong. Why?" Grace, standing tall, met his gaze with a quiet confidence. "What do you mean, the ideal?" she asked, feeling more curious than afraid. "The ideal," Zephyr replied, his voice like a low hum, "is what I have seen among the humans. The beautiful, the strong, the fit. But you are different. Yet you do not break. Why?" Grace shrugged slightly, a small smile forming on her lips. "I've always been who I am. People look at me and they see something different. But it doesn't change who I am. I know my own worth." Zephyr tilted his head. "You do not seek to change yourself." "No," Grace answered firmly. "I've learned not to. I don't need to look like anyone else. I'm fine with me." Sheriff Carter had been observing from a distance, standing just outside the barn where Grace and Zephyr were talking. He had to admit, this was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Grace, the woman who had once been an afterthought in the eyes of others, was now speaking to this powerful alien like she'd known him for years. Hank walked over slowly, his boots crunching on the gravel. "You seem to be getting along with the alien," he said, a bit of skepticism in his voice. Grace glanced at him, then back at Zephyr. "He's not what people think he is, Hank. He's trying to understand, not conquer." Zephyr's glowing eyes flickered as he observed the sheriff. "Your leader is skeptical," he said, almost as though reading Hank's thoughts. "I'm not sure what to think," Hank admitted, stepping forward. "We don't know why you're here, what your purpose is, or why you chose Grace. You're talking to her like she's some kind of special person, but she's just ... Grace." "I am learning," Zephyr said, his voice calm. "In the universe, strength does not always appear in the way one expects. It is not only the strong who are powerful, the quiet, the overlooked, the underestimated ... They often possess more strength than any one individual can see." Grace smiled, a glint of understanding in her eyes. "I think I understand you. You've been traveling, seeing all sorts of people, right? And you thought strength came in one form. Maybe you thought it came from looking a certain way, acting a certain way. But that's not the whole truth, is it?" Zephyr nodded, and for the first time his armored form seemed less intimidating. It was almost as if Grace's words were having an effect on him, making him rethink the way he saw humanity. "I have seen many worlds," Zephyr admitted, "but none of them have been like Earth. None of them have had beings like you. You do not see yourself as others do. And that is difficult for me to understand. Why are you so different from the others?" Grace thought about it for a moment before replying. "I've had my share of doubts. I've been told I'm not what people want, not what they think is good enough. But it's only recently I've realized that I don't need to be what they expect. I'm just ... me." The sheriff had been listening closely. And although he had doubts about the alien, he couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for Grace. She had always been tough, but this was something more. She was teaching the alien, of all things, about the strength that came from within. Maybe this whole situation wasn't as strange as it seemed. As days passed, the townspeople became more used to Zephyr's presence. Though many still viewed him with suspicion, others were beginning to see that he wasn't a threat. The alien was actually seeking answers. He was curious about humanity, about the way people lived and thought. He even began working with Grace to understand more about Earth's culture, its people, and their ways of life. One evening, as the sun began to set and the town was beginning to quiet down, Grace and Zephyr stood outside near the old oak tree by the edge of town. Grace had been showing Zephyr how the human body could adapt to different environments, explaining the concept of endurance, strength, and emotional resilience. She was proving to him that there were different kinds of power: emotional, mental, and physical. "You're kind, Zephyr. You've got technology and strength," she said, her arms crossed. "But we've got something else. we have heart. We have the ability to keep going, even when the world tells us we shouldn't. And quoting, he looked out over the fields, where the last rays of sunlight were disappearing behind the mountains. Then he turned back to Grace, his voice soft, but filled with newfound understanding. You are right. I see now. The strength you speak of, it is not what I thought. It is ... something else. It is the ability to endure, to rise when you fall. Grace smiled, her confidence clear. That's exactly it. Sheriff Carter watched them from a distance, a small frown on his face. He wasn't entirely sure what this meant for Silver Ridge, for Grace, or for the future of humanity. But there was something undeniable about the connection that had formed between Grace and the alien, something that went beyond simple curiosity or even power. The next morning, the alien returned to town, but this time it wasn't just to observe. He wanted to understand. The people of Silver Ridge had always been strong, whether they realized it or not, and Zephyr wanted to learn from them. He began asking questions, not just to Grace, but to everyone. He wanted to know why humans were so resilient, so capable of enduring hardship. Grace, once an overlooked figure in the town, was now the key to understanding the strength of humanity, something the alien had never anticipated. She had taught him more than he could have ever imagined in return. Zephyr was beginning to see humans in a new light. Sheriff Hank Carter, standing beside Grace one evening, turned to her and said, "You've really got away with this alien." She shrugged, a grin tugging at her lips. Maybe, or maybe he just needed someone who didn't fit the mold. And with that, the bond between Grace and the alien continued to grow. Silver Ridge, once a quiet town, had become the center of something much larger, a story of strength, acceptance, and the power of seeing things differently. The quiet life of Silver Ridge was gone, replaced by something extraordinary. What had started as a strange encounter between an alien and a town had now evolved into something much bigger. Grace Monroe, once the subject of whispers and sideways glances, had become the unlikely leader at the center of this transformation. But the journey was far from over. The true test was yet to come. Zephyr, the alien from beyond the stars, had been learning from Grace, the people of Silver Ridge, and the human experience itself. And though many in town had accepted him as a visitor, there were others, those who feared the unknown, who weren't so eager to embrace the idea of extraterrestrial diplomacy. The town's peaceful days were coming to an end, and new challenges were beginning to surface. One crisp evening, as the sun set behind the mountains and the town settled into its usual quiet, a second ship appeared. It came out of nowhere, no bright light or warning this time. It simply emerged from the sky, casting a shadow over Silver Ridge. This was no peaceful visit. The ship was enormous, its dark, imposing shape blocking out the stars. The air seemed to shift, vibrating with tension. Sheriff Hank Carter was the first to spot the ship. He had gotten used to strange things happening ever since Zephyr arrived, but this felt different. His heart raced as the ship descended toward the town, a loud hum filling the air. "Get inside," Hank shouted, pulling his hat off and running to the sheriff's office. He reached for his radio, calling out for backup, though he knew this wasn't something the local police could handle. He needed answers, and fast. Ellie, the young deputy, rushed to his side. "What's going on, Sheriff?" Hank's face was grim. "I don't know, but it's bad. Get to the others and tell them to stay indoors. No one goes outside until we know what's going on." Grace, who had been meeting with Zephyr outside the town square, looked up at the descending ship. Her heart skipped a beat. She had learned to trust Zephyr, but this felt wrong. The fear in the air was palpable. "Zephyr," Grace said, her voice steady but filled with concern. "What is this? Is this part of your people?" Zephyr's expression, usually calm, shifted. No, this is not part of my people. These are the Dracarians, an enemy faction. They seek to conquer, not understand. I never thought they would come here. Grace felt a chill run down her spine. The Dracarians were known for their aggression and desire to dominate other worlds. If they had come to Earth, things were about to get dangerous. We have to prepare, Grace said, turning to face the sheriff, who was already rallying the townspeople. We can't let them take over. Not after everything we've learned. Zephyr nodded. I will help. But the Dracarians are more powerful than I am. We must be clever. We must use your strength, your unity as a weapon. The sheriff, who had been listening, stepped forward. What do we need to do? If it's war they want, we'll give it to them. But we're not going down without a fight. Zephyr's eyes narrowed. I do not seek war, Sheriff. But the Dracarians will not stop until they have claimed this world. Your people must stand together. I believe you can defeat them, but you must act quickly. As the alien ship landed just outside the town limits, the air grew tense. The Dracarians emerged from the ship, tall, armored beings with sharp, angular features and glowing red eyes. They were a sight to behold, their black armor reflecting the dying light of the sun. Their presence was commanding, and the people of Silver Ridge could feel the weight of their arrival. The sheriff quickly organized the townspeople, preparing them for the worst. He had his doubts about whether they stood a chance, but he knew they had something the Dracarians didn't. Unity. The people of Silver Ridge might not have been soldiers, but they were a community. That made them stronger than anything the Dracarians had ever encountered. Grace, standing beside Zephyr, took a deep breath. This is it, she said. We fight for our homes. We fight for humanity. Zephyr nodded but said nothing. His focus was on the Dracarians, watching as they advanced toward the town square. The air was thick with anticipation, the final moments of peace slipping away. Sheriff Carter stepped forward, his voice booming. You are not welcome here, he said, his hand resting on the handle of his gun. If you want to take this town, you'll have to go through us. The Dracarians stopped. Their leader, a tall, dark figure with glowing red eyes, stepped forward. We are the Dracarians. Your planet is now ours. Resist, and we will destroy you. The sheriff didn't flinch. Over my dead body? But enough. The Dracarian leader shouted. We've given you a chance to surrender. Now we will take what we came for. The tension was thick, like a drawn bowstring ready to snap. Grace stepped forward, surprising everyone. You don't understand. You came here looking for power, but you've forgotten something. The Dracarians sneered, their eyes glowing brighter. Grace stood tall, her voice firm. You underestimate humanity. We've been knocked down, but we always get back up. You think you can take us? You think you can just roll over us? No, you're wrong. Dracarians laughed, but it was a hollow sound. Grace's words had struck a chord. The Dracarians did not understand the resilience of humanity, the strength that came from within. They saw power only in force and destruction, not in the will to survive and grow. Zephyr moved beside Grace, his voice calm but filled with purpose. You will learn that humanity is not easily defeated. Your invasion will not succeed. The Dracarians' leader glared at them. Then you will all die. With a signal, the Dracarians charged. The ground shook as they advanced, but the people of Silver Ridge didn't retreat. They stood their ground, armed with nothing more than their courage, their community spirit, and the guidance of the alien who had come to them for understanding. The sheriff fired a shot into the air, signaling everyone to begin. The fight was unlike anything the people of Silver Ridge had ever experienced. The Dracarians were powerful, but the townspeople were determined. Every home, every shop, every person stood together, fending off the invaders. The women and men of the town, young and old, worked as one, using what they had to defend their homes. Grace was at the heart of the battle. She fought like she had never fought before, her strength a beacon for the others. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been told they weren't enough, for everyone who had ever been overlooked. Her strength wasn't just physical, it was the strength of every human who had ever struggled, ever fought, and ever gotten back up. Zephyr fought beside her, using his advanced technology to protect the town and keep the Dracarians at bay. But it was the unity of the people that made the difference. They didn't need alien technology to defeat their enemies. They had something far more powerful, their unbreakable will to protect what was theirs. As the sun began to rise, the tide began to turn. The Dracarians, realizing they could not defeat the combined strength of Silver Ridge, began to retreat. They had underestimated the power of humanity, the power of unity, resilience, and heart. The sheriff stood next to Grace as the last of the invaders fled. He was breathing heavily, covered in dirt and sweat, but a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Well, Grace," he said, "looks like humanity's not done yet." Grace, still standing tall, turned to Zephyr. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with pride. Zephyr nodded. "You did it. You have proven that humanity's strength comes from its heart, not its appearance or its power. It is the spirit of your people that makes you stronger than any conqueror." Sheriff Carter looked at Grace with a newfound respect. "You were right. I didn't get it at first, but now I do. Humanity doesn't need to change to be strong. It's already got everything it needs." People of Silver Ridge cheered, embracing each other, celebrating their victory. They had faced the impossible, and they had won. Together, they had proven that humanity was stronger than any force, any alien, and any threat that might come their way. And as the dust settled over the town, Grace stood there. A quiet leader in a world that had just learned how powerful humanity could truly be,